Okay, good morning, everyone. It is the 12th, I believe, of Mar Cheshvan, 5784, Erev Shabbos Parshas Lech Lecha. We're in the midst of the war, Swords of Iron, the Milchama that it was due to the attack on Simchas Torah a few weeks ago. And I would like to open a discussion with you about serving in the army for Yeshiva students. And it's a large topic. It's a hotly debated topic in Israeli society for a very long time, has brought down governments over this issue, very strongly held beliefs on both sides. And the first place, I think, to start is to learn the sugya, to learn the sources that are found in Tanakh and in Torah Shebal Peh, and try to analyze them correctly with intellectual honesty to try to see what the sources are saying. After that is done, I believe that the process should be then to see what these Jewish values, how they can be implemented, and are there other factors that need to be considered when applying them? Every generation has got its own challenges. And even if we were to find, for example, to try to say that just like you see in Tanakh, the greatest tzaddikim, those pious, those without any sins, they're the soldiers, they're the ones who went to war. David had an army. And throughout Jewish history, there were armies. Yeshua had an army. Moshe had an army of great tzaddikim. Why should the yeshiva students be exempt? And we'll try to look at the sources, but then the question is application. What other factors that may not have been relevant back then are relevant today that we need to consider? Is the training process, bringing the yeshiva students, mixing them with the general population under the command of people that are not necessarily observant, don't necessarily have the same values, taking them out of the bubble? What would that do to society, the spiritual level that is required? If there are exemptions that are made in the army for necessities of the community, essential matters, then is not the spiritual level of the community not an essential matter? And what are the sociological, economic factors that are going to affect the spiritual, physical, familial? What are the effects that are going to happen? That discussion, those other factors need to be weighed by the Jewish community leaders after, in my opinion, after they understand what the Torah values are, and then the application needs to be applied with the new factors. And then you also have the consideration whether or not you should be carrying on a tradition, say this is the way the previous generation had done it. We're traditional people. Some of us do behaviors and customs just because it was been done for many centuries. And whatever was done in the previous generation should not be evaluated again and just continue in the same process. That itself is a question. Some people might argue that. Or sometimes people must say, you know what? That was a decision made in the 1950s, in the 1920s, in the 1830s, and we have to reevaluate. These are all important questions that have to be addressed after we at least know what the sources have to say. So this is a long process, and I want to just work with you. We're not going to come to any conclusion. We don't even know who the Jewish community leaders are that need to make these decisions. That's another issue in Klal Yisrael. Who are the Jewish leaders? There's many different factions. This one trusts that this is a great Torah scholar and leader, and this one doesn't recognize that, and he has somebody else. And do we get together a consensus? Do we go out? It's a very complex matter. There's a lot of different issues that have to be addressed. But what we can do at least is to start and to study the sources without making any decision. And I want to emphasize that I'm not presenting here some sources, and then we're going to come and say, the source says this, so we should do that. We're not anywhere near that. We're just going to learn the sources, have the background. If someone does mention something about a source, and he may have heard it from somewhere, doesn't know the source and the nuances of the source, we can at least talk intelligently to them and say, listen, that source may not be relevant here because of such. This is where it is. Let's study it together. At least we have the source for the matter to explore. And it's just an initial intro, and it's appropriate for us, which we're learning Torah, and this day we'll be learning the Torah of these matters and leave out the decision. And I don't even expect to finish all the courses in this class. I don't expect to finish the sources. Hopefully we'll just start the sources. And then if we do finish the sources, maybe this is part one, I would think. Maybe next week will be part two. And then we can have an open conversation, perhaps amongst ourselves, to see what to do with these sources and if they're applicable or not. Okay? Any questions that you may have up until now, what I've just said, before we begin the sources? Okay. But I want to bring a source, and I'll give you the location of the sources so you could research them on your own if you like. There's one source in the Gemara in Brachos, Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. Kol hamarpa atzmo midivrei Torah, ein bo koach lamod be'es tzara. A person who has a normal level of his study of Torah, if he starts to weaken it and he doesn't keep up his level of Torah study the way it was beforehand, okay, he may have difficulty withstanding the troubles that will come to the community at the time of crisis. And Haman himself seemed to have recognized this, because Haman turned to Mordechai when he saw him studying Torah with his yeshiva students, and they were studying the laws of Omer, bringing the sacrifice of the barley. And Haman told Mordechai, your Omer that you're studying now, it has the power to push away the 10,000 silver coins that I presented to destroy the Jewish people. So we see that the Torah study has a power to help the Jewish people at large during the time of war. That source itself doesn't seem to be sufficient to say that it should be exclusively done at the expense of also studying. It just says, keep up your standard of learning when at all possible. It just tells you about the nature of the power of the study of Torah, but not directly affecting. But that's an important stage in itself. There is a benefit to the study of Torah that offers a person to withstand a crisis. There's another aspect that we do find has power to it, and that is prayer. In Parshas Matos, the Torah tells us that soldiers were sent out, I believe in that war, was to fight Midian. Midian was a group of non-Jews that were on the eastern side of the Jordan, right above Eilat area, where today Eilat area is, not far, like south of Petra. Around the Petra area, on the Jordan side, is where the Midianites lived, and the Jewish people were waging a war there against the non-Jews. And the words of the Torah are Elef Lamata, 1,000 soldiers per tribe. And the Talmud, Medrash Rabbah, says, why does it repeat the word Elef Lamata? 1,000 per tribe, 1,000 per tribe. Medrash Rabbah, this is in Bamidbar Rabbah, in 22:3. The verse is found in Bamidbar Matos 31:4. You can check it out. And the Medrash tells us 1,000 from each tribe was set aside to be warriors, and another 1,000, 1-to-1, of people that were set to the battlefield to pray. Now, it doesn't say that those who were sent to pray were actually capable of being warriors, So we don't know if a person should be giving up his army duty when he's capable of it in order to pray, but we do see the power of prayer that the Torah itself tells us that you should have a ratio of 1-to-1, soldier, warrior fighting to one person praying. And we do see the power of prayer. And another thing is that though it was necessary for those people who were praying, it may be women, it may have been elder men, it may have been children, I don't know. But they needed to go to the battlefield in order to be in the line of battle to feel the needs of the warriors, and that would make their prayer whole. It would bring them to the feelings of the crisis and the dangers that are associated. And so we do see the power of prayer. So we've just established that there is a power to Torah, there is a power to prayer, that those are important sources, yet it doesn't tell us what to do when you have a person capable of being a warrior. Can he opt and say that I would rather be the one studying Torah or the one to be in prayer? Is that worthwhile, or is that relegated to the people that are incapable of fighting? And then you have those that are studying Torah, or during the times when one is not capable of fighting. And I will actually turn right now to a section in the Gemara that talks about Yehoshua, just to illustrate this point, where it might be that you need to actually go to war and study Torah, the same people themselves. Let me find the source for that. There's a Gemara in, I believe, in Eruvin. I believe it's in Eruvin Samach Gimel. Let me just double check that. Yeah, Eruvin Samach Gimel Mebeis. The Gemara says that Yeshua, who was a Jewish king and general of the army, leading people in battle, and he had a vision where an angel came with a sword stretched out towards him in the book, and there was a sign that some trouble is about to happen. And Yeshua turns to the angel and tells him, this is towards the beginning of the book of Joshua, Yoshua, and he tells him, according to the interpretation of the Gemara in Eruvin, he says, something bad is going to happen to the Jewish people. We did something wrong. What is the sin that we are about to suffer punishment for? Is it because we have stopped bringing this daily sacrifice, the Korban Tamid? Or is it because of Bittul Torah? We are not studying Torah. And the angel responded, according to the interpretation of Rashi, it is because you're not studying Torah. You are fighting your battle during the day, and during that time you are exempt from the study of Torah. But at nighttime, when you are in your camps and you're not fighting, at that time you should be studying Torah. To which the response was, went to rest in the that night in the Amek, and the Gemara explains, Lan be'omka shel halacha. He started to go into the depths of Torah study with the soldiers at nighttime to ward off the crisis. So we do see the power of Torah study here, but the Torah study was actually meant to be done by the soldiers themselves at the time that they're not battling. We don't yet see any license for people to say that I want to have a full day of Torah study and not go to war if they're capable of going to war. So we have Torah study, we have prayer, and being that we're right in the middle of between Parshas Noach and Parshas Lech Lecha, I'll mention another source that I believe is relevant for the power of prayer to help in crisis and to save people. In the Navi in 54:9, the Navi Yeshayahu refers to the flood as Mei Noach, the waters of Noach. And the Talmud and the Zohar explain why is it called the waters of Noach? And the Zohar says because Noach was at fault for this flood to come. He's held accountable as if he caused it to happen because he did not pray enough properly for the people. And we see later on Avram, how he prayed to save people, and how Moshe Rabbeinu prayed to God to save the people. Noach heard the orders, did not pray sufficiently, and therefore the Navi Yeshayahu refers to it as Mei Noach. So we do see that prayer does have this power. So let us go. We know that the prayer is powerful. We know that Torah study is powerful. What do we do about the responsibilities of war? There are responsibilities to go to war. There are religious, halachic responsibilities. A lot of the section, that next section I'm going to share with you, is directly out of the Rambam in the Laws of Melachim. The Rambam has a section of laws of war. You may want to look at that in Hilchos Melachim of the Rambam and Mishnah Torah. It's in Sefer Shoftim from Perek Hey, Perek Zayin, and Ches. A very important selection. And the Rambam teaches us some principles I want to share with you. I'm just going to loosely tell you the points, but of course, it's always worthwhile to look at the original Hebrew in the sources themselves. The Rambam tells us there are some wars that are obligatory, and they are a mitzvah, and they are commanded by God for people to go out to war and to battle. One of them is Amalek, to destroy Amalek. One is in the conquering the land of Canaan, where you have the 7 nations. And the third obligation, mitzvah, milchemet mitzvah, is when the Jewish people are attacked by a nation, and you want to come out to support and to defend the Jewish people. Okay? The words of the Rambam. Okay. Let me try this. Perek Hey of Melachim, the first halacha. Ezras Yisrael miyad sar sheba alehem. You have an enemy that comes to attack you, and you want to help the Jewish people. It is a milchemet mitzvah. It is obligatory for everybody to go, and the ruling authority has the power to draft against their will every able soldier to fight. This is not just the Rambam goes on to explain, this is not just a battle on the physical level. It is meant to be a spiritual, uplifting battle for the purposes of honoring Hashem. The Rambam goes on to say in the 7th chapter of Melachim, Halacha Tetvav, 7:15, a person who is a soldier who is drafted to the army to fight the battles. He's actually talking about both a Melchemet Mitzvah and a Melchemet Reshut. But right now, we're just, Melchemet Reshut is when it's voluntary, and it's a different category of mitzvah. But the Rambam here is referring to both. But right now, for us, we could talk about what's relevant for us, a Melchemet Mitzvah. When it's obligatory, you're coming to defend the lives of the Jewish people. You're defending the lives of the Jewish people on the land of Israel. That is a Melchemet Mitzvah. And the Rambam says you have to recognize a person who cannot stand the battle scene, his heart is not strong enough to enter into that gory and difficult circumstances, should not go to war. There is a violation to go to war, because if you're going to be weak and you're not going to be strong emotionally and psychologically, you'll have a negative impact upon the others. But a person who does go to war should recognize that he is relying on Hashem to save the Jewish people, and know that he's going to battle for the sake of Hashem. He is doing the war on behalf of God for the honor of God. He should not show any fear and be afraid in his heart. He should not be thinking about his wife. He should not be thinking about his children. He should not focus on anything but the battle zone. A person who is thinking about other items at that time is in violation of a Torah violation that says, Al tiru tachpazu, al ta'artzu, special violations of the Torah to not get distracted. He should feel as if the lives of all the Jewish people are on his shoulders. And if he does not fight with all of his strength and all of his heart, it is as if he is spilling Jewish blood. And as it says, V'lo yimas et levav echav kilvavo. If he may weaken, he may drop the morale of the other soldiers, and that can be a cause for the Jewish people to lose the battle. there is a special curse associated with such a person who does not fight with that conviction that Hashem is going to be there and he's going to be victorious. Arur oseh meleches Hashem remiyah. Cursed is a person who does God's holy work in a defective way. Arur moneach harbo midam. Cursed is the person who holds the sword back from taking life and killing. These are Torah, religious obligations to go to battle, to kill and to fight, with recognizing that his kavana, his intent is l'shem shamayim. And the Rambam says, if you go to battle for the sake of Hashem, nothing bad will happen to you and to your household, and you'll be blessed with generations of Torah, a family. So it comes out that going to battle is part and parcel of your religious obligation. Anytime a non-Jewish community, a government, enemies attack us, Jews, the Rambam in his work to the people in Yemen, he wrote in Igeret Teiman to the Jews in Yemen, and he said, if you are attacked, the Jewish people are attacked because they are Jews, recognize that they are actually attacking against God and his religion. The Jewish people represent something in this world, and they, the other nations and the other religions, in some way or another, whether they recognize it or not, subconsciously, the neshama of their angel, so to speak, is jealous of the closeness that Hashem has to his Jewish people. And they are attacking God, and recognize that any battle against Jews around the world is a battle against Hashem. This is in Igeret Teiman in the Standard Edition, pages 115, 116. And therefore, when we're going to battle, there is a great mitzvah. You are doing a holy work. There's sections in the Torah that you need to fulfill. What I'm just laying out in front of you is the responsibility, the religious, halachic responsibility that comes along with the need to battle. And these some of the things that we're going to need to consider if we try to exempt Yeshiva students from battle. What do we do with these obligations and this part of Torah that is right in front of us, and it's very clear? The Rambam at the end of the 4th chapter of Melachim writes very clearly. He says the intent of all the soldiers should be to raise the level of the honor of the Jewish religion, to fill the world with justice, to break the power of the evil people. These are the objectives of every single Jewish milchemet mitzvah. And that's really the words that we're hearing around the world and from their communal leaders, our government leaders today, that it's an axis of evil. We are standing on the good side. We're going to stand up for justice. We're standing up against evil. This, and the added part, which is not mentioned by the army leaders, but the Jewish soldiers should feel in their heart, it is to raise the honor of the Jewish religion and a Jewish God. But all of these things are very powerful religious experiences and responsibilities. Would a yeshiva student who's aware of this, a Rosh Yeshiva, want his students to not be part of this important responsibility to get involved in this holy work? Is it appropriate for B'nai Torah, yeshiva students, to refrain from saving in battle by saying, I'm going to be saving and using the power of study of Torah to save the people? Maybe you're supposed to just be learning at nighttime when you're in battle, or at those times when you have off, like the angel told Yehoshua. These are some of the questions that have to be addressed. And I want to add another 2 mitzvot, potential mitzvot that come along with the battle. One we've discussed, and clearly as all the mitzvot, the positive and the negative mitzvahs associated with the milchemet mitzvah. And beyond that, there's another source of the Ramban holds, and many other Rishonim accept, that there's a mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. The Ramban counts it, I believe, in mitzvah Zion, if I'm not mistaken, in the mitzvos that he counts, and he says the mitzvah is to conquer the land of Eretz Yisrael and not allow it to remain in the hands of non-Jews or to be left empty and desolate. That is a mitzvah that we have. Sometimes it is beyond our control. We're kicked out of the land. We were not here. But if you have the capability and you're able to do it, there is the fulfillment of a mitzvah to take that land that is holy Eretz Yisrael and not allow it to be in the under the control of non-Jews. Okay? There's another mitzvah of lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Don't stand idly by when you see a Jewish life at risk. If you have, it's a very clear halacha. The Rambam writes it in the 14th chapter of Rotseach. If you see someone being attacked and you could do something to stop it, by yourself or even calling someone else to help out, even if you need to lay out money in order for the police to come, in order for an army to come, you have a responsibility to be active. Don't be passive and just watch and start filming it so that you could record the attack. And you have to actively put your phone down, do what you can to interact with the foe, or hire someone who is, as long as you're not going to be putting yourself in too much line of danger yourself. That's another issue. But if you can do it, you should be doing that. Now, that is a response, whether a person is drowning, whether he's attacked, or a person is dying and you know some Heimlich maneuver, he's choking, whatever it is, you have a responsibility. Now, to take that responsibility and actually put it on every single Jew in the time of war might be a bit of an exaggeration, because you say, which person actually has the responsibility to do it? It is a collective responsibility, and it could be the mitzvah of lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. Technically, is when you are the only one capable of doing it, you cannot stand idly by. Or if you need to do it also, otherwise the job won't get done. But if the job can get done by you or someone else, I raise the possibility maybe there is no obligation to get up and do it. Somebody else can do that job as long as it's going to get done. But clearly, I see that the intent of the Torah is there may not be a technical obligation, but certainly the intention of the Torah is that we should be doing what we can to save lives. And certainly a person who does save a life is fulfilling the mitzvah kiyumit, even if it was not a chiyuvit, even if it's not obligatory. Certainly, we do it voluntarily, you're in fulfillment of the mitzvah. So you have many reasons why one could argue everybody who has the capacity to enter into battle should be doing so, whether it's a mechemet mitzvah, whether it's a kibush Eretz Yisrael, or it's saving Jewish lives when we are attacked in such a horrific way. So therefore, we need to explore further why it could be that Torah observant, educated, responsible people are not stepping forward to join in such a fashion. And again, I want you to think about the overall question, but I don't want us to start applying these sources yet to the case at hand. Let us first explore all of the sources and understand some basic understanding of what the sources have to tell us. And then the next more difficult job is to make applications and see what other factors need to be considered before making that decision. Now, let me go to another Rambam. Rambam is the father of halacha, the father of values, the father of our teacher. From the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, on his grave it is signed, there has never been another man like Moshe as such a teacher of the Jewish people. So I turn to our teacher more closer to us than Moshe Rabbeinu, but he actually wrote down the entire Torah in his book, Mishnah Torah. And whenever we have a question, we look towards him as the authority figure. There's a Rambam at the end of the laws of Zraim, of agriculture. And he talks about how when you plow fields and you reap and you harvest, you need to give off tithes, and you need to give some to the Kohen and to the Levi. And what do you do on Shemitah? How you're supposed to leave the field fallow. And right at the end of all the laws of Shemitah v'Yovel, he makes the following declaration. He says, I'll pull it out and read it to you. This is in chapter 13 of Shemitah v'Yovel, Halacha Yud Beis and Yud Gimel. Yud Beis. Why did not, I'm loosely translating, why did Shevet Levi not merit a section of the land of Eretz Yisrael? It was given to Reuben, Shimon, Yehuda, Yisachar, Ephraim, Menashe, but Levi did not get a section of the land. The answer is, says the Rambam, because Shevet Levi was designated to serve Hashem in the temple. Shevet Levi is meant to be the educators. They're meant to study the Torah and know the Torah and the right ways of Hashem and to know the just laws. And they are meant to disseminate that and teach that to all of the Jewish people. As it says, Yoru mishpatecha liYaakov v'toratcha liYisrael. Shevet Levi should, this is and Moshe's blessing at the end of the Torah in Zos HaBracha. Let Shevet Levi be the teachers of Torah to the Jewish population. Therefore, they have been separated from all matters that are normal physical activities. They should not go to war like the rest of the Jewish people. They do not get a piece of the land. They do not need to work it. They are the soldiers of God. They need to be supported by the rest of the community. They're not going to have land to work and to harvest and to eat their own food. 1/10 of all the produce of the other 12 tribes, if we count Ephraim and Menashe, is meant to be given over to a tribe of Levi, and they're to be sustained by the rest of the Jewish people. One part of the Jewish people is disconnected from the normal life cycle of getting up and going to work and providing for your family, because they have a religious obligation. They are soldiers of God. That means no work, and that means no war. They are not to be the soldiers. Then, the Rambam adds in Halacha Gimel, Yud Gimel, V'lo Shevet Levi bilvad, not only the tribe of Levi, Ela kol ish v'ish mikol ba'ei olam, ha'olam, every single human, and he actually says a very powerful terminology. He's not even talking about every single Jew. He talks about every single human. Asher nadva rucho oto, v'hevino mada'o lihibadel la'amod lifnei Hashem l'sharto la'avdo l'de'as Hashem. Any person who has touched and he understands the truths and his heart is moved enough that he wants to separate himself from the normal activities of human beings to work for a living. And he wants to dedicate his life to the pursuit of connecting to God and teaching Torah to others. And he can throw off from his shoulders the yoke of responsibility to take care of himself, asher bikshu b'nei adam, and that people are running after. Kadesh kodesh kodeshim. That person becomes purified and holy of the highest level. Hashem will take care of him. He will merit here in this world a minimal amount that he needs to live on. Just like the Kohanim and the Leviim received their sufficient, what they need to live on, Hashem will provide for this person, and he can just focus his energies on religious pursuits. And he brings the source from David HaMelech, Hashem menat chelki v'kosi ata tomech gorali. Hashem, a person can come and say, you're going to take care of me. I rely upon you, God, and you're going to provide for me. Here we see that there is an exemption towards battle, and that is the Shevet Levi. But there's two things the Rambam tells us. Number one, the tribe of Levi doesn't go to war. And number two, he doesn't need to provide for himself. Hashem will take care of his needs. And how did Hashem take care of the needs of the Leviim and the Kohanim? That is by the Trumot Ma'asrot by the tithes of the Jewish population. Now, then the Rambam goes on to say, not only Shevet Levi, but anybody who dedicates himself towards this religious pursuit merits, but here the Rambam just mentions the fact that Hashem will provide for him that which he will need, the minimal amount that he will need to live on. The Rambam does not mention the first point, that he is exempt from war. It is not clear to me if that person who's volunteered to connect himself to the spiritual pursuit of Torah study, of being holy of holies, of being connected to Hashem and being a Jewish communal leader and a teacher of Torah, exempts him also from the army. One could argue, the Rambam is saying that anybody could make this decision to be like Shevet Levi, and he'd have both exemptions. He both an exemption to go to work and Hashem will provide, and an exemption for the army. That is a possibility that needs to be considered. But the Rambam actually does not say it. To me, the simple reading of the Rambam, and I want you to look at it if you have an opportunity, is only regarding the Hashem providing for him can a person voluntarily say that, but he is not exempt from war. Another further analysis of this section is there's a series of questions that Torah scholars have asked on the Rambam. How could the Rambam say that Shevet Levi is exempt from war? There are many other sources in the Gemara and the Rambam that seems to indicate that Kohanim, that the priests are in the battle. And I will share with you some of those sources. And then we'll see what we do with this, because it may have a reflection, even if we're going to argue that a yeshiva student who connects himself and says, I want to pursue a career of Torah study my entire life. I want to be sustained on a basic level. I don't have an expectation of having a vehicle. I don't have expectation of a large home. I just want to be sustained on the basic level, and I want to dedicate my life to Torah study. And Rambam says a person is allowed to do that. Let's say he is also allowed to do that, and then he will also be exempt from war. What we need to do is to explore whether or not that is applicable, because what we could study is the laws of Leviim and see if the laws of the tribe of Levi has a complete exemption, because there are some significant problems with this. Why? There's a law of the Yafat Toar, which means to say if a person goes in battle and under certain circumstances, he may take a female captive, put her through a conversion process, and take her as a wife. It's brought in this first section of Parshas Kiseitze. There is a section, the halacha, it's found in the Mishnah, and it's also brought down in the Rambam, in the 8th chapter of Malachim, halacha Daled. The Rambam tells us that a Kohen can also take a Yafat Tar. If he goes in battle, he's generally not allowed to marry a non-Jewish woman, even a convert. But he is allowed, there's a special exemption for a Kohen that he can take a Yafat Tar. And the people say, 1 minute, the entire tribe of Levi shouldn't be in the battle in the first place. And if Yafat Tar is this woman, a non-Jewish woman is taken captive, is permissible to a Kohen, apparently there are Kohanim, there is Shevet Levi in battle. How does the Rambam deal with that? It seems to be a contradiction. And there's another halacha, which says that when you go to battle, you are certain people that are exempt from the battle. For example, a person who got married in the first year of marriage, the Torah says, you are exempt from battle. Says the Mishnah, and again it's a Rambam in Perek Zayin Halacha Chet of Malachim, that says, if you have a Kohen who married a divorcee, and now he's in battle, he should not have married her, he wasn't not allowed to marry her, and he is in battle, and he says, you know what, I want to get an exemption because it's my first year of marriage. The marriage is valid when you marry a divorcee. Says the Mishnah, he is not exempt. He should not have married her. And therefore, you're not exempted. You cannot go home. That's a halacha. It's in the Gemara, it's in the Mishnah, and the Rambam quotes it in the source I told you. The question remains, on what basis is he exempt? Sorry, he can't take the hold of the exemption. What is he doing in the battle in the first place? The Rambam says the entire tribe of Levi doesn't go to battle. So we have to first explore these laws of the Rambam on its own merit to try to make sense of it, try to find a solution for that in order to be able to consider applying this exemption to anybody who voluntarily decides to be like Shevet Levi. So we're going to need to go through this. There are a number of responses to this. Maybe I'll just take another few moments to at least close this section and share with you some of the responses to this question. The Griz, the Brisker Rav, who actually is one of the fathers of the Yeshiva movement. Many of the Yeshivas today pledge allegiance to the Brisker Rav and his way of thinking, and their Yeshivas are based upon that style of study of Torah. He was the Jewish leader of Jewry here in Eretz Yisrael in the 1940s and 1950s. Here in Eretz Yisrael, he was known as the Gadol Ador, the Brisker Rav. He writes in his commentary on Sota, Daf Mem Gimel, he says this exemption of Shevet Levi going to war doesn't mean that they're entirely exempt and they don't go at all. It just means to say that if it's a time of that the army does not need to have all hands on deck, and there is enough personnel to be used for the soldiers in battle, then they are exempt Shevet Levi. But if you're in a situation of war where you need to have everybody on hand, then even Shevet Levi is required to go to war. Okay? The Kohanim, the Levim need to go to war if the army determines that you need to have that personnel in order to effectively battle. And therefore, all the sources that talk about exemptions of Shevet Levi, he's allowed to have a Yifator, that he doesn't go be Orchei HaMilchama, is when we have a situation where we need all men on deck. That's one answer. The Chubina Rav, who was also Rosh Yeshiva, not far from where I live, he had a yeshiva right across the street from me, Kochav Yaakov. He wrote a sefer called Doviv Misharim, and I specifically am choosing commentaries by Roshei Yeshivot, leaders of Yeshivot, who have addressed these issues. And he says another answer. He says you are exempt. Shevet Levi is exempt from going to battle as a kravi, as a warrior, but you are still required to do the other activities of the army that needs to be a supplier of the ammunition, to be a supplier of meals and things like that. So they are in war, and that's why. But they are expected to go. The Birkei Yosef, in his interpretation of the Mordechai, he says the Kohanim are exempt, but they can volunteer. And all the sources that discuss the Kohanim is when they volunteered for the army. Rav Kook, Rav Avim Yitzchak HaKohen Kook, in his book Shevet Haaretz, page 254, he says an interesting approach. He says that each tribe may go to battle to extend their territory or to take care of their own territory, and on that, Shevet Levi is exempt. They don't have a territory, so they have nothing to expand. And that's what it means when Shevet Levi is exempt. However, when the Jewish people as a whole are attacked, then every able man is required to be involved in the army, including Shevet Levi, because it's an attack against all of the Jewish people. And it's not just if you're being attacked in your territory is it danger, but if you're attacked to all the Jewish people, then you're required to go. And he adds an interesting point. He says, those people who are dedicated to Hashem and they're the highest spiritual level, they more than anybody else should be the warriors. They are the most appropriate to take part in the battle. So what we do see is that even Shevet Levi has situations where they're required to go to battle. When there's not enough personnel, they can voluntarily join. They need to be involved in being suppliers, and they also need to be involved when the entire Jewish people are attacked. Having said that, Even Shevet Levi has situations where they're required to go to war. Then the question is compounded on these yeshiva students who have decided that they want, let's say they want to see Torah Sanum Nasan, they want to dedicate their lives. I don't even know if the exemption was ever applicable to them to be exempt from war. And even if they were included in Shevet Levi, there's plenty of other things they could do to be suppliers. If they need the personnel, they should be involved. And then the question is compounded. These are some of the sources. We haven't completed the learning part of it yet. God willing, next week we'll continue with the source-based approach to study the sources and to understand how is it that we view Torah study as being so powerful that it is worthwhile to take able-bodied soldiers and say, capable of being soldiers, and say that you are exempt. Please protect the Jewish people by the great intensity and focus that you have on Torah study. Please understand, I don't want to come across as if I have an agenda here. I try to be as fair about it. I have training as a judge, as a dayan. And in that training, it has offered me to be able, and all dayanim, to be able to study the text and to study the material. And that's the first thing that you do before you form an opinion. Don't let your heart sway you way you think should be. The job, I think, needs to first be academic, put everything on the table, study the material, get the information there, and then once you have the information there, then you need to start weighing and applying and comparing, and that is the job of a judge, that is the job of a posek, that is the process that I want to take you through. I'm trying to approach this without an agenda, just studying the material with you, and try to reserve judgment yet. We haven't even completed the sources. Think about it, study the sources, and after we come to a full presentation of the sources that I found, and we consider the matters, at that point, everybody should be able to allow that to inform them of what they believe, and then take that into your heart and bring that into your heart as your ethic and value. Don't start with your ethic and value as this is the way things should be, and then try to direct the Torah to where you want to go. That is the process that I believe is the best way to approach these matters. Any questions or comments that you have on what we said today?
Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
Okay.
Thank you,
Stay
Rabbi.
tuned for next week. We are in the middle. Don't make any conclusions.
Okay.
Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Thank you ever so much.
Go to.
Bye.